There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Be a movie. Yeah, we're gonna be a movie.
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Be a movie. We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody.
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.
And we are going to start right here. Hello, and welcome to a Radulich Broadcasting Network podcast triple feature. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me tonight is David Wright. How do you do, sir?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Mark. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all that to everyone.
Yes, Mad Kwanzaa to you as well. And happy Boxing Day. Boom, boom.
Yes.
Boxing, right? Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, got to get those deals somehow.
So tonight on the marquee is a trio of cyberpunk sci-fi movies led by three leading ladies. We have Ghost in the Shell from 2017, starring Scarlett Johansson, to the chagrin of everyone. Aeon
By
Flux,
everyone, we mean no one.
and then Aeon Flux starring Charlize Theron, and then Ex Machina starring Alicia Vikander. So first, I actually was supposed to do this with somebody else, but he was not able to get all three movies in time and bailed on the podcast. But you heard I was doing this and got excited and kind of inserted yourself, which I'm grateful for, or I wouldn't be doing a podcast right now. So what made you want to jump in on this one?
Simply put, Ghost in the Shell. I'm a big longtime fan of the franchise, so it's more like I'm here for Ghost in the Shell, and I kind of watched the other two just to talk about Ghost in the Shell.
Faustian bargain, eh?
Something like that.
45 minutes later, fine. Now we can talk about Aeon Flux.
Well,
I'm done.
Yeah, well, I did previously see Aeon Flux years ago.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, so since you're all excited to talk about it, let's do a brief introduction of what Ghost in the Shell is, and then you can kind of tell me your history with it. So Ghost in the Shell started its life as a manga, and then it was a animated movie, and now it's a live action film, again starring the aforementioned Scarlett Johansson. It was directed by Rupert Sanders, written by Jamie Moss, William Wheeler, and the infamous Erin Kruger. It came out March 31st, 2017 in the United States, had a budget of $110 million. It exceeded its budget, but it was not profitable. This thing bombed at the box office. Scarlett Johansson, when she's in an Avengers movie, she's really, really good. When she's on her own, it's sometimes a bit of a tough sell in the leading lady role, unfortunately. So I got to ask, did you read the manga? Did you watch the animated movie? Tell me about your history with this product.
Sure. Well, the first thing I saw was, the 95 animated movie by Mamoru Oshii, that sort of the cult classic film. Mm-hmm. After that, I think I did track down a copy of the manga, and I read all of that. And then in the early 2000s, they did a TV anime called Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. So I watched that. It got a second season. Watched that too. I think there was a TV movie added. Then they did a second animated series called Ghost in the Shell Arise, which was kind of like Ghost in the Shell Begins. Like they're all teenagers now, almost. Okay. At least the character designs looked a lot younger than previous. So they kind of started with the backstory of Section 9 and whatnot. And then I think there was also Standalone Complex Season 3, which showed up on Netflix. Watched that. So I've seen most of the adaptations of Ghost in the Shell, including Ghost in the Shell 2, the second movie by Mamoru Oshii, which I think was just part of a Faustian bargain to get another film he wanted made. Gotcha. Done. It's like, okay, we'll make your fancy art film about how anime sucks now because no one has any different ideas. Just make another Ghost in the Shell movie. People will actually pay money to see that. So he did. And so Ghost in the Shell has had a lot of incarnations over the course of its life, and even like Masamune Shiro, the original writer, he's been pretty cool with that. He's just, I'm happy to just, this is my version of it, and let other people sort of take my ideas and, run with it in different directions. For the record, I would say Standalone Complex, the first two seasons are probably what I would consider the best incarnation of Ghost in the Shell. They kind of have the most big ideas with a decent budget and some good writing on it, almost sort of like a cyberpunk procedural series. So that's kind of the Ghost in the Shell that all others are judged against.
If you were to, and I want your answer in two parts, okay?
Yeah.
I'm giving this is a test question. I need an essay form. I need two parts answered. So if you were to sell somebody on watching Ghost in the Shell, like, hey, you should check out this IP Ghost in the Shell and all of its very incarnations. Why? And when they say, okay, but what's it about? Remember, you're at the water cooler. They have to go back to work. You can't be all day. You can't be Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the red string and everything. You have like 50 words or less to tell them why and tell them what. Why Ghost in the Shell? What is Ghost in the Shell?
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's one of the sort of foundational cyberpunk stories. Sort of Ghost in the Shell and Blade Runner, I think, are probably the two biggest ones. It was a big inspiration for The Matrix back in the day. And basically what it's about is it sort of takes place in the not too distant future where cybernetics have become very commonplace and information technology is advanced a lot. And, when I say cyborgs, I'm not talking about the Borg from Star Trek. These are, cyborgs that look very much just like normal humans. Just, they can have super speed, super strength. You can plug right into the internet, and it kind of just explores crime and sort of some of the esoteric questions arising from that.
Okay. It seems to, at least judging from how the movie was done, it seems to deal a lot with someone's memories, their past, them they wake up as one thing, they used to be another, and it's that search for the other that's motivating them. Am I off on that?
Well, again, there are many different stories told in Ghost in the Shell, and even the original manga was a lot more just punching bad guys type stuff.
Okay,
whereas the Oshii movie, that was a lot more navel gazing, where like in the case of the Major, it's more like her sort of trying to figure out, what makes me me. Like, we can identify ourselves by our physical forms, but there's a scene in the movie where she's just out and about town and she sees like other bodies almost exactly like her. So, it's like, what is it that makes me inherently myself? And they even get into the idea that, your memories can be hacked. So your entire life could just be a fabrication written by someone else. So it's sort of, what separates the ghost from the shell? And the idea of the ghost is it's this sort of part of the consciousness that cannot be copied. Like that's sort of like your soul.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when they announced that they were, let's just talk about this for 1 minute, and then we'll get into the actual movie. When they announced that they're doing a Ghost in the Shell movie, I think this was Paramount who did this. I think Paramount might be responsible for at least 2 out of the 3 of these. Yeah, Paramount's definitely responsible for this one. This was Paramount, Amblin, DreamWorks. So this is Steven Spielberg's production company, Paramount, all of that. And when in development, they were like, okay, we're going to do the Ghost in the Shell movie based on this manga / anime / whatever. And we're going to get Scarlett Johansson in the lead. I know you joked about it, but there was a segment of the population that was like, what the hell, man? Because I'm guessing the actual lead is an Asian gal.
It takes, the Oshii movie, I think, takes place maybe around Hong Kong, or at least it's definitely in an Asian country. Standalone Complex is without a doubt in Japan.
Okay. Did you care? Did you feel like there were, a half a dozen other Asian actresses that could have done the role better? What was your thought on the casting of Scarlett Johansson for this?
Yeah, I mean, this was when she was big from, being Black Widow in the MCU. So
right.
she certainly had, she knows how to put on a cat suit and do action scenes.
Sure does, Ollie.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I could, and she's a big name. So the business, the business side, the producers with their cigars, pitching it. I could totally get why they went with Scarlett Johansson.
I know why, and if I'm on the side, if I'm on the side of the studio, there's no debate about this. A half a dozen Asian actresses aren't going to sell nearly as many tickets in theory, as Scarlett Johansson, who was just in the Iron Man and Captain America movies.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of run into the problem of finding an actress that has the physical abilities, yet also the acting chops to do that. And in the case of some Asian actresses, that I know, like they had Rinko Kikuchi, a lot of people said, because again, Pacific Rim. But Rinko Kikuchi, I mean, good actress, but her English is not that great. She does most of her lines phonetically. So, she has a very limited range in performance.
Right.
But so, Yeah, I think it would be more of an indictment of just that Hollywood hasn't really produced like a female Asian action star that could sell movies, and like even I'd be hard to press to sort of say who would I cast in this movie as an of what actors I know that would fit the character and be able to do the acting as well as the action bits.
And then the other side of it is, you got to get more than just the fan base out. There isn't enough of a fan base, I would imagine, to really make this worth doing. This isn't an art piece. This is supposed to be a major. What was the budget on this thing? I said 110 million. This is Marvel money. This is
low end Marvel money.
This is meant to do $600 million. Who do you plaster on the poster that's going to drive all the boys to come see this thing? And there's not a lot of good answers there.
Well, what I find so funny is like the place on the planet where the least amount of people were worked up about this was Japan.
What are all your white people crying about?
Yeah, they're like, Scarlett Johansson, great. We love Scarlett Johansson. She's playing like a lead role in a Japanese story. Like, this is great. We're so happy. Like, Masamune Shiro, he signed off on it. Mamoru Oshii, like, no one in Japan, from what I heard, raised a single stink about Scarlett Johansson being cast in this thing.
Maybe that should have been question one. Well, how do the people in Japan feel? We don't care. All right.
Oh, welcome to Twitter, where it's like 90% white people complaining about what they think is offensive to anyone else, right? Like it's one of those. Well, it's like, what was it? Avril Lavigne wore like a kimono in something or other, right. And they'll this is cultural appropriation. How could she do this? And in Japan, it's like, wow, Avril Lavigne likes kimono. She appreciates Japanese culture. That's so cool, right? Like say what you will, the Japanese, and they're great people, but they're pretty confident in their own culture. Like they don't seem to mind it when other people.
Yeah, that's take interest in it, and they're like, appropriate our culture. Go, take it. It's fine. We want to share.
Yeah, I mean, there is a line.
Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, overall, yeah, like they seem pretty on it, and most of the PR I heard in Japan around it was pretty okay. Mamoru Oshii was saying, this is the best Ghost in the Shell has ever looked. Granted, he didn't talk about the story; he was just talking about the visuals. Read between the lines there, but that seems, when I was reading up on the history of this, that seemed to have been the buzz where everyone agrees that the movie looks good, and we'll get into the craft now of it, but everyone seems to have agreed the movie looks good, and Scarlett Johansson's doing her best with the material. The story in and of itself borders between meh and what? Yeah, because like for me, like I said, I've seen many of the different incarnations of this franchise, and what you can do with this setting. So I saw the movie. It's like, oh, they just went with the most boilerplate, boring milquetoast story they could for this.
Yeah, that's
spoiler alert: the corporation is evil. That's it.
Okay. So the plot, such as it is, goes like this. In the near future, humans are augmented with cybernetic improvements into traits such as vision, strength, and intelligence. Augmentation developer Honka Robotics establishes a secret project to develop an artificial body or a shell that can integrate a human brain rather than an AI. Mira Killian, the sole survivor of cyber terrorist attack which killed her parents, is chosen as a subject after her body is damaged beyond repair. Over the objections of her designer, Dr. Willett, Honka Robotics CEO Cutter decides to use Killian as a counterterrorism operative like you do. A year later, Killian has attained the rank of Major, in the Counterterrorism Bureau of Section 9, working alongside operatives Batu, Tagusa, under Chief
Aramaki.
Okay. Killian, who experiences hallucinations that Willett dismisses as glitches, is troubled by how little she remembers of her past. The team thwarts a terrorist attack on a Honka business conference, and Killian destroys a robotic geisha after it murders a hostage. After learning that the geisha was hacked by an unknown entity known as Kuze, Killian breaks protocol and dives into its AI for answers. The entity attempts a counter hack, and Batu is forced to disconnect her. They trace the hacker to a Yakuza nightclub. It's always the Yakuza, David.
Well, in Japan, yes.
Where they are lured into a trap. The explosion destroys Batu's eyes and damages Killian's body. Cutter is enraged by Killian's actions and threatens to have Section 9 shut down unless Aramaki keeps her in line.
Again. Section 9 gets shut down a lot.
Okay.
They're almost like S.H.I.E.L.D.
Gotcha. Kuze tracks down Section 9's Honka consultant, Dr. Dahlin, and kills her. The team links her murder to the deaths of other senior company researchers and realizes that Willette is the next target. Kuze takes control of 2 sanitation workers and sends them to kill Willette. Now with cybernetic eyes, these eyes, Batu kills one while the repaired Killian subdues the other. While they interrogate the worker, Kuze speaks through him before compelling him to commit suicide. Tagusa traces the hack to a secret location where the team discovers a large number of humans mentally linked as makeshift signals network. Killian is captured, and Kuze reveals that he is a failed Honka test subject from the same project that created Killian. He urges her to question her own memories and stop taking her medication, as it actually helps block her memories. Kuze then frees her and escapes. Killian confronts Willette, who admits that 98 test subjects died before Killian and that her memories are implanted. Cutter has decided that Killian is a liability, like you do, and orders Willette to kill her after she returns to Honka Robotics. Instead, Willette gives Killian an address and helps her escape. Cutter kills Willette, but blames Killian, saying that she has gone rogue. He informs Aramaki and then the team that Killian must be terminated. Killian follows the address to an apartment occupied by a widowed mother, who reveals that her daughter, Motoko Kusanagi, ran away from home a year ago and was arrested. While in custody, Motoko took her own life. Killian leaves and contacts Aramaki, who allows Cutter to remotely eavesdrop on their conversation. Batu, Tagusa, Aramaki eliminate Cutter's men, trying to ambush them, while Killian follows her memories to the hideaway where Motoko was last seen. There, she and Kuze meet and recall their past lives as anti-augmentation radicals who were abducted by Honka as test subjects.
That didn't work out very well, did it?
And then this tank, and then the spider from Wild Wild West shows up.
Or the end of the first movie.
Yeah. Cutter deploys a spider tank to kill them. Kuze nearly dies before Killian is able to tear out the tank's monitor control center, losing her arm in the process. Mortally wounded, Kuze asks Killian to come with me. There is no place for us here. Killian refuses, saying, "No, I'm not ready to leave. I belong here." Kuze says he will always be with her, and the ghost then fades out. Then a Honka sniper kills him. Batu and team rescue Killian, while Aramaki executes Cutter with Killian's consent. The next day, now repaired and embracing her true identity as a Japanese Motoko, Killian reconnects with her mother and returns to work with Section 9. And nothing of value was lost or gained. All right, so I have to ask, before we get into this, is there anything, we've talked about this with like other movies, like Spider-Man, for example, specifically Sam Raimi. It looked like there were actual panels that were cut out of the comic and storyboarded and then shot in the movie. Was there any iconic imagery from the manga or from the animes that's in this film, or was it kind of wholesale their own creation?
Not so much from the anime, not so much from the manga. From the 95 Oshii film, a lot of scenes were lifted. Okay. The context of those scenes was completely changed. But in this movie's fairness, every adaptation of Ghost in the Shell pretty much lifts those handful of scenes. Standalone Complex did it. I'm sure Arise did it. Whatever they do next will do it. Like Oshii has a real eye for that. That
95 anime film, it sounds like it's the most influential going forward of this IP.
Certainly visually, like as far as some scenes go, like you have the helicopters flying over at the beginning of the movie. That's taken right out of it. In fact, the whole Motoko being built, or the Major's body being built at the beginning, is pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the opening of the 95 movie, just with different music, which is as good. Like the bit at the end where she's falling from the building and she puts her hand in front of her face as she cloaks, that's lifted right out of the 95 movie. Yeah,
I must have seen that in a trailer or some. I've never seen it, but I have seen images of it. I have seen shots of things. I knew that one.
Yeah, the fight scene where she's fighting the garbage man and she's got the thermoptic camouflage on and the water's bouncing off of her cloaked form. That's pretty much shot for shot out of the 95 movie, which is an amazing scene. Like it's pick one scene from Ghost in the Shell you want to see made with $100 million worth of Hollywood special effects. That's the one.
Gotcha.
So there's bits here like the fingers splitting into little keyboard tendrils. That's from the first movie. The eyes opening up and her plugging her face into the computer. That's from the second film. So there's a lot of things that have been lifted from mostly the 95 film. But again, in their defense, every version of Ghost in the Shell lifts most of those scenes.
All right. Well, this is the part you've been waiting for, Dave. So tell me, what did you think of this movie?
It was very predictable, bog standard. like, they didn't save your life, they stole it. It's like, you know that line's there. Like, of course, the medicine she's taking is what's suppressing her memories instead of helping her. Like, it's, again, they told probably the least interesting story they could and tried to make it half an origin story. Like in the original, like, again, cybernetics are commonplace. Like the Major isn't anything special in terms of her cybernetics. And I mean, she's special in that she has a lot of cybernetics. She's like 80%, robot, and has been for
the way
most
they
of her
shot
life.
it. She seems like a human head, and the rest of it's a robot.
Just about, brainstem, everything else is there. And for the most part, her origins are shrouded in mystery. I think one of the episodes they kind of gave her a bit of a backstory, but that's never really been important to the character. It's just more like she's really, really good at using her body. Like she can do all the backflips in martial arts, and she's tactically a very savvy person. That's kind of her character, and the show works best when it focuses not just on the Major but on the cast.
Okay.
Like one interesting thing is you have Bato and Togusa, who Bato I think is very well done in this version. The actor that plays him I think does a pretty good job with the character. He's sort of the more musclehead type character. Still a fairly smart guy, but he's almost kind of acts as a big brother to the Major, even though she's pretty much mostly his superior in ability. But you also have like Togusa, who has very little to do in the movie. But in the show, he's basically has very little cyberization. He kind of like just has a port in his neck to plug into the internet. But otherwise, he's pretty much 100% human, and he's like a father and husband. So you sort of have all these different things that they experience in this, like post-singularity world, and you have all these variety of opinions on that. Like how Togusa views something is different than how the Major would view something because he's not a cyborg.
Okay. So as I'm hearing you talk about the movie and thinking about the things that you've said about the various iterations of the IP, it's a pretty Herculean task when you think about, like, we're going to make this for not just a worldwide audience, but an American audience first. And we're an American studio, and we want this to be a big budget, $500 million or more picture. But it sounds like the trick with an adaptation, especially of something like this, is you can't just gear it towards the hardcore fans. The hardcore fans are the ones that get all the details of the one, when you break it down so that a general audience can get it, you lose the hardcore fans. Be like, we know all this stuff already. Move on. Like, let's see something else.
Yeah.
Or let's get deeper into the IP. But then I'm going to tell you what my experience was like watching this. It was an okay movie. I like just from a general craft point of view, it didn't feel like it explored the esoteric, ethereal, existential questions enough. There wasn't nearly enough action to keep me interested, and Scarlett Johansson mumbles through the whole thing. So it looks great, but the other legs of the stool are all cracked, and I was having a hard time getting through it. And so I go back to it. I was starting off with this, and you're like eager to jump in, so I'm going to shut up and let you do it.
Yeah.
Is where do you, the skill in adapting something like this is figuring out how to engage me as an audience member and you at the same time. And we are not the same person.
Yeah. Well, I would say as I would say a fairly hardcore fan of it. I'm certainly not the hardest of the hardcore, and proud to say so. I mean, does anyone really want to be that guy? But like, I wasn't looking for like a shot for shot remake of anything. Of course, there are certain scenes that would be cool to see in live action, and certainly, there are obviously little homages that they put in, again, like the hand in front of the face and all that. Right. Okay, fine. You can throw that in there. That's okay. But it's more like the world and the characters. You can take them and go anywhere. This is sort of something that the Cowboy Bebop adaptation also sort of didn't quite get right, is that you don't need to remake the series. You can have these characters and write a new adventure for them. And it still works. So I wasn't really going in there expecting, I want to see this story perfectly adapted into live action. Just, take this world and do something interesting with it, with the power of Hollywood effects and budgets.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. They
Sure.
took, and because we've talked about this in the past, before I do, friend on Twitter says, much like all adaptations from the manga anime, those who try to adapt the property miss the point of the story and always try to improve something as if it's broken. And I would agree with that.
I can't really think of what they improved on though. Like,
well, they try is what his point is. So
Yeah.
Demon in a Bottle, most famously, it's one of the more famous Iron Man stories.
Yeah.
And this is not going to be a whole tangent thing, but just to make your point for you, Demon in a Bottle is Tony Stark's struggle with alcoholism that results in him losing the Iron Man armor and having to go into rehab. That's the whole story. And they used Demon in a Bottle for Iron Man 2. But instead of struggling with alcoholism, he was struggling with dying. The arc reactor is killing him. And the beats of the story are more or less the same. The treatment of it is different. The specificity of it, the specific points is different. Instead of alcoholism, it's death. But the story is pretty much there. Like that's an example of, I think, of what you're talking about, which is, we don't necessarily need to see the actual demon in a bottle captured on screen, where it's, Iron Man leaves Las Vegas. What we do, tell your story. You can just draw inspiration from these things. Yeah. Like
for example, the original movie, the 95 movie is just like a robot body, that is to have a person put into it, escapes all by itself. So the evil corporation is trying to get this thing back because like an AI that they have has gone rogue and stolen this body. But from like Section 9's perspective, like the Majors and Bato especially, it's like, can a body generate its own ghost? So it's kind of, AI achieving consciousness, which we'll get a bit more into in the last movie we have to look at here. But, so I sort of like my view of Ghost in the Shell is it should be something more like Standalone Complex was very much like a sort of procedural show just in this universe. So there was kind of like a different aspect of things shown each episode, though there was at times a through line overarching plot, but they would also do little side stories here. So think of it like almost like a Bond movie, right? Where, here's our villain trying to destroy the world for reasons. James Bond has to go and stop them. So we can say, well, let's explore AI achieving sentience here. Or maybe second movie, let's explore what makes us human. Like there's this fantastic line from the first movie from the AI that it says, information cannot be defined, but it defines man, or I would say humanity here. Like, all we are is information in our brains. Yet, we can never quantify what information actually is.
You brought up Cowboy Bebop, and I wanted to go ahead with that. I wanted to support your point, which is, the complaint we had about Cowboy Bebop was we liked it better when they were doing stuff. When they were out, getting bounties, having adventures. When it became about their past, and it became about what's his face's dealing with the mob and all of that.
Yeah,
the show got dragged down, and I think Ghost in the Shell operates in much the same way, where I much rather wanted her to see her complete missions. Like go on adventures, go do something. I didn't mind the attempt to deal with, I'm being used against my will and they've changed my memories and I'm not who I thought I was. The problem is, much like Cowboy Bebop, it completely drags down the narrative. And a better written movie deals with who am I, to where that becomes tolerable and even enjoyable. Unfortunately, there's a chasm in between what this one does with it, to where it's like, look, if you're not going to deal with it well, then just make her kick a lot of ass.
Yeah, and I think if you don't deal with those sort of higher ideas, which is kind of what sort of gives the spice to the Ghost in the Shell, it's like there's no sizzle to the steak, and you just kind of get you're sort of bland, generic. Okay, everything is wrong. The corporation's evil. Punch stuff. Spider tank.
Right. I will tell you this then I think the key to have adapting this would have been to try to treat that a little bit better. I don't think it was successful in that matter.
Yeah, and you don't need a lot. You don't need to make a navel gazing, super intellectual show. You can still have all of your punchy and kicky and explosions, but give it a little bit of something to for your brain to munch on. Like pick one big idea and do something with that.
I think the bad guy in the mission, the plot that drives it forward, needed to be separate from her agonizing over her own memory and state of being and who and what am I.
Yeah, often that
be an
stuff
internal conflict.
Yeah, that stuff's more in addition to the plot. Like you have
Correct.
these separate events that they're dealing with,
Mhm.
but then you have sort of how they are reacting to what is
Right.
happening in the world. That's sort of where
And that's the
deeper
problem
stuff
with this
goes in.
adaptation is that becomes the entire movie.
Yeah.
The entire focus of this is, hey, I'm not who you said I was, and I'm gonna destroy, I'm gonna burn everything down. And it's like, meh. You know, and then there's a problem with her as a character then, because then she's not somebody who's interesting enough as she's written in this movie to where I want to see her reclaim her life. And when they're even when she starts to get those memories and she talks to, I think, her mother and whatnot in the movie, like, and this might be a performance issue, and this will be the last thing I say, and I'll give you the final word. I like Scarlett Johansson as an actress, and I think when she's given something with a little bit more bubble to it, a little bit more flash and fancy, you get the full Scarlett Johansson effect. They wanted her like brooding and ass kicking, and it's not that she doesn't pull it off. It's just that she can do it and it be cool looking and it be interesting, but then other things have to highlight the film. You know, there has to be light elsewhere. It can't be dark upon dark upon dark upon dark. And that's the problem here, is that you look to her to kind of be the shining light in this really, really dark story, and she's not all that interesting. And you're like, well, I've got now nothing to really hook me to this. And if you're like me and you're like not a fan of the IP, then this just becomes generic cyberpunk story, and I'm on to the next thing. Give you the final word.
Yeah, it's to sort of quote Mike Toole, the sort of anime pundit reviewer. Like, you know, it was an average movie that got an average reception. Like, and that kind of sums it up. But yeah, I think they didn't really dive into what made the source material that much interesting in its best form, and that sort of hurt them. And I do think it did suffer a bit from being a sort of a grungy looking future. Like, I mean, yeah, they had all the holographic advertisements on the city, which I think was kind of their attempt to punch it up a little bit, right, to differentiate it. But that's not really where it was needed.
No, and here's the thing about this, and then we're going to go right into Aeon Flux. You need your movie like this, while it has a dedicated fan base, needs to grab people. You know, when they run a trailer against another movie or they run TV spots of your movie, it needs to be able to grab anyone sitting on the couch who hasn't the fuckiest freaking clue what this is. You do that with images. You do that with, to one degree or another, star magnetism. You do that with a couple of different elements. If you become kind of a slave to the image of the thing, if you become a slave to its aesthetic, you take the chance that you're going to lose people who are just not interested in that sort of thing. And then what else is there to bring people to the theater? And I have to remind people, as much as I like art, I like my wolves and my pigs and my lambs, and my Zolas. The object is to sell tickets to a feature.
Yeah, but this should have been like a political thriller set in the not too distant future, where cybernetics are commonplace with a bit of existential crisis, you know, put on the top for a bit of spice. That's kind of all you need, and you don't need to go into backstories and into details. Like, you just know this is a team of elite government agents. Some of them are cyborgs going around solving crimes and kicking butt.
Sounds great. Make that movie.
Exactly. Which is what they should have done.
You know what you could have done to help you write that movie?
What, Mark?
You could have used, I did all that and I didn't even write the time down. You could have used Grammarly by Godfrey. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2M-network. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2M-network to download Grammarly for free. My son was kidding me about this yesterday. When we were recording the Christmas podcast, he said something, and I went into one of my plugs, and he was just like, "Are you done with your boring plug now? Can we go back to the movie?" I'm like, "Thanks, Jonas." I think you froze. Oh no, you're
welcome.
All right. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, let's move on to our next feature. This is Aeon Flux. Aeon Flux began its life as an animated science fiction TV show on MTV during their liquid television block. It's from 2005, stars Charlize Theron, is directed by Karen Kusama, who also is known for Girl Fight, Jennifer's Body, The Invitation, and Destroyer, and she has an upcoming Dracula movie coming out, plus a whole bunch of TV credits. And this had a budget of $55 to $62 million. It bombed. It made about $52.3 million. This was yet another Paramount feature. They were the production company on it through MTV Films was the actual production company, and Paramount distributed it. And I was aware of Aeon Flux. I watched enough MTV as a kid that I would see commercials for liquid metal and liquid television in general, and then specifically for the Aeon Flux show. And that was on MTV from November 30th of 91 to October 10th of 1995. And then this movie came out 10 years after that. So very timely. Anyway, so I think you said at the top of the show right before we started recording that you watched Aeon Flux for this podcast, but had you not heard of this? Had you not heard of the cartoon? You had no idea what this was?
Well, way back in the early days when I first started getting into the whole anime scene, you'd go to like the local HMV. Don't know if you have HMV in the States, but your mall, video music store.
Sure.
And you hunt and find the anime section, and you'd flip through like the 10 DVDs they had there, and wish they all cost a lot less. But and Aeon Flux was always in there. But it had a very different art style, and I mean, it's not anime; it's like American animation, but it's adult animation, right? So that was kind of all I really knew of it. Was like, okay, there's this thing called Aeon Flux that's in the anime section, but it's not anime, so I didn't care about it.
So yeah, 1995, I'm in college. 91 through 95, I'm high school and then college, I should say. I was in high school through 90 to 94. And so, like I said, I watched a lot of MTV, specifically Headbangers Ball. So I was very much aware of this thing, but I did not care what it was. I did not care to learn. It was not for me. I looked at the animation style and what this was, and I'm like, no thanks. I'm not sure who thought that animation style looks good. Well, Peter Chung, I guess, and the Wachowskis, because he did an Animatrix segment. Yeah. But other than that, the original Aeon Flux in this movie, that's all I've ever heard of but I remember, like, I would see, again, watching commercials of it, and I bring this up because this is yet another thing where I think they really, really tried to recreate some of the more iconic scenes, specifically the Aeon Flux character sort of splitting and hovering over the bladed grass. Like, for me to have remembered that, like that, they must have used that image in a lot of the marketing because they do it in the movie, and I'm like, I've seen that before. The other thing, and someone who watched the show will have to explain this to me, but the bug in the eye thing, like I remembered on all the marketing, you had the eyelashes catching the fly, and that's the opening shot of this movie. And I'm like, and what are we doing here with this?
Yeah. Who wants that? Who wants like a struggling fly that just ate poop, flits it around on your eye,
Yeah, I don't know why that's part of the marketing. I don't know why that was like one of the iconic images from this show. And, and then once it's in the show, once it's part of the canon, you have to do it in the movie, right? So they do. It has nothing to do with anything, and I don't know why it's there. Other than to satisfy people who are like huge Aeon Flux fans, of which there are
badass who has 5. Really fast reaction to reflexes, faster than a fly. But
sure, she's Mr. Miyagi. Yeah. All right, so let's get into Aeon Flux here. Hey, this might sound familiar to people. In 2011, a deadly pathogenic virus killed 99% of the Earth's population, forcing the survivors to
that plot line is nowhere near as exciting as it used to be.
Really? I was like, wow, could I have picked a more like contemporary topic to talk about a movie in? 4 centuries later, in 2415, the remaining 5 million humans inhabit Bregna, a dystopian walled futuristic city-state, which is ruled... God, speaking of foundation, by a Congress of scientists. Although Bregna is largely an idyllic place in the destroyed Earth, people routinely disappear and the population is plagued by nightmares. They should have called it Moscow. A skilled warrior named Aeon Flux is a member of the Monarchans, an underground rebel organization like Gav, who communicate through telepathy, enabling technology, and are led by the Handler, played by Frances McDormand. After a mission to destroy a surveillance station, Aeon comes home to find her sister Una has been mistaken for a Monarchan and killed. When Aeon is sent on a mission to kill the government's leader, Trevor Goodchild, she discovers that both she and the Monarchans are being manipulated by a cabal of council members working towards a coup d'etat unrelated to the goals of the Monarchans. Aeon questions the origins of everyone in Bregna, and in particular, her personal connection to Trevor. Everyone in Bregna is revealed to be a clone grown from recycled DNA, with the dead constantly being reborn as new individuals and bearing partial memories of their previous lives. Their troubling dreams have increased. Cloning was required because the antidote to the virus made humans infertile. Trevor's ongoing experiments were attempts to reverse the infertility. His preceding clones had all worked on this problem. Aeon learns that she is a clone of the original Trevor's wife, Catherine, and that she is the first Catherine clone in over 400 years. Una was one of Trevor's most successful experiments, part of a group of clones that proved to be fertile, with Una having been pregnant when she was killed. However, in order to keep the dynasty of the Goodchild clones in power, Trevor's brother Oren had Una killed along with members of the fertile experimental group. He ordered all of Trevor's research to be destroyed in a confrontation with Trevor and Aeon. Oren reveals that nature has corrected the infertility problem and that some women are becoming pregnant without intervention by scientists. Oren has had them all killed to maintain the Goodchild reign. Aeon then goes against both Oren and her former allies who want to kill Trevor. Aeon convinces the other Monarchans to ignore the Handler and to help her kill Oren and his men. Aeon goes to destroy the relical, the dirigible that stores the DNA for cloning. There she meets Keeper, the old man who monitors everything. She discovers that he preserved Catherine's DNA for years, although an earlier Oren clone had ordered it to be destroyed, so Catherine could not influence any Trevors. The dirigible crashes into the city wall, breaking it down to reveal the surrounding land for the first time in centuries. It is lush and fertile. Oh, God, the government has lied to us. They lied, rather than wasteland they had been taught. All right. What'd you think of this one, Dave?
Not a whole lot, in all honesty. All I really remember is, catching fly in eye, woman with hands on feet, which was kind of neat. Yeah, bladed grass, blimp with an old man dressed like a burrito. And
what's with the future and collars that come up to here on you?
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, does nobody just wear a T-shirt anymore? Like, come on, like.
Yes, everyone's wearing, couture. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's either couture or like used football gear. And for some reason, people can now communicate by drinking potions and stuff. Like, I have no idea how that works.
This is my least issue with this movie. I actually liked it, to be honest with you. I like the idea that the reason why people are having sort of like memory meltdowns and, sudden burst of emotion for one reason or another is that it's recycled DNA. And despite all of that, and I don't need to hear it doesn't work that way. You don't know how it works. So they made up a science fiction thing in a science fiction movie. Oh my God.
Yeah. Cloning works. Okay. I'm on board.
Yeah. And so your memories from a life past intercede on your current memory. Great. Also, past Nebula was connected to future Nebula, on the same mechanical link thing that they had. Who gives a shit?
It's like, is anyone complaining about the cloning in this movie has actually cloned a human being before? Raise of hands. No, then shut up.
Right. Go back to your sheep.
Yeah. Anyway, same thing with time travel. Like, have you traveled back in time? No, then shut up.
Right. Until you come back with your metaphysics degree, I don't want to hear it. Anyway, so I thought that was fine. The idea of, and it's funny because we're going to talk Foundation. I think Thursday night. So we'll kind of come back around this again. But, this idea of very conservative leadership, monarchs essentially doing everything they can to preserve their line, being afraid of progressive ideas, change, that sort of thing. It's all very political and very known.
Yeah, not as juicy as it sounds, but let's keep things the way they are versus let's change things to something hopefully better.
I was reading subtext. Anyway,
Yes.
so
Lots of subtext.
and so we have our rebels who want to upset the order of things, but then we have the human drama of the bad guy in this was connected to the good guy because they used to be lovers.
Yeah, the bad guy was the good guy all along.
Yeah.
I will give him credit that at least the future city looks kind of nice. Like I'd
Yeah.
actually want to live there, and the society's not organized based on a high school cafeteria.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it's I hate to
YA
say it,
has ruined this genre so much.
because again, I have no IP to base this on, so I don't know how close it is to the original Aeon Flux. But who gives a shit? Look, the movie had a simple enough plot for me to follow, with characters that had easy enough motivations to understand. The action in it was pretty okay. The the sequence they have of them storming the Citadel, and you have the one girl with hands for feet. I thought was a pretty cool effect, pretty cool visual. She's basically an ape.
Evolution. Why can't we do that anymore? Because that seems like it would be a really useful thing to do.
Charlize Theron's line about that is really funny. She's like, "You should do this. It's really helpful." And Charlize's like, "I like my shoes." What a girl thing to say. I applaud you, Charlize Theron and writers.
Yeah, and all the progressivism in the film died with that line.
That's how I like it. That's like the best scene in the movie is them storming that Citadel, which is probably in the anime. Them jumping over the bladed grass and all of that. The middle of it, much like Ghost in the Shell, gets a little up its own ass, but they kept the action rolling along to where I didn't necessarily. This was the appropriate length for this kind of feature. It was 90 minutes flat. I think is what it runs at. Yeah, 92 minutes. It didn't need to be a minute longer or a minute shorter. So it kept me interested. I said the motivations and plots were easy enough to understand, where I was with everybody because being a longtime science fiction fan, some of this stuff can just be utterly convoluted to where it's like, I'm sure you're telling a nice story. I wish I could understand it.
Yeah.
The downside to this is everyone's other than Charlize Theron, even Charlize Theron, everyone's kind of bland. You got bland villains, we got bland heroes. So it all looks really, really cool. But if you didn't tell me this was the Aeon Flux adapted movie, I would have thought this was just generic cyberpunk action movie with cyberpunk action girl. Yeah,
it's not even cyberpunk, really.
This is cut from like the same cloth of a zillion other movies.
Yeah, agreed. It's it's usual dystopia, future rebellion, oppressive government, post-apocalyptic. Yeah, it's at least with Equilibrium, you kind of had the crazy gun fu type stuff. Right. I mean that movie is ridiculous in its own ways, but it's kind of like, I've seen this movie before. Yeah,
this is one of those, and that's one of the things with triple feature is outside of the odd one that we do, a lot of this is going to be compiling a lot of just fine movies, as somebody once said, like very recently to me, like why do you expect every movie to save the world or solve problem? Like, I don't. It'd be nice if they were well crafted, but I'm not expecting a life-changing thing to happen to me. And Aeon Flux, I think more so than Ghost in the Shell, was one of those where I could absolutely put this on with my kids, watch it, have a good time, and utterly forget about it 5 minutes after I've hit stop.
Yeah, I think one version of this that I liked a bit more is it's an anime series called Appleseed, which is also based on a manga by the same author as Ghost in the Shell, actually. And I think one thing that makes these sort of future dystopias work is it's actually a world I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. Like the city of it's Olympus in Appleseed. It actually looks like a nice place. I'd like to live there. The rest of the world is Mad Max, but you have this one sort of mega city that's actually, we're still doing all right. We've still got high technology, running water, park green spaces, and like advanced industry. Mm-hmm. And sort of seeing that world now, it's a place I actually care about and want to see succeed. So now that when you threaten it, now I'm on board.
I think that might be one of the issues with Aeon Flux, thinking back on it, is we really don't get any time to see what this world is, the downside to it, and why people are rebelling. You get kind of a crash narrative.
It's just these sort of sterile, concrete plazas with IKEA furniture in them, which again is better than Mad Max, but
right. Well, it's not even that so much that it's, like, oh, we have the good child monarchy and we need to unseat it because people are disappearing. People are disappearing, and that's unconnected from the sudden burst of emotion that nobody can explain. And and it's sort of the way the story is told. They just lay that at the field, like it must be them doing it. It must be the good child people doing it. And it's like, how would you know that? You have no way of proving that. And it's this whole other issue. So my point being, like, that's one of the flaws in the narrative, is that you don't really get a good sense of what drove these people to rebel. Like, okay, so just as an example, really quickly, the Galactic Empire blows planets up.
Yes, I was trying to blow planets up at the beginning. But
it's enslaving non-humanoid aliens. It's it's killing as many people as they can, pretty excessively.
Their ships look like giant knives, and their soldiers have literal skull helmets.
Right. You get the sense very quickly that there might be some people who are upset about this sort of thing and might try to stop it. So the Star Wars set up its world building very, very quickly. And
the first 5 minutes of that first movie are sheer brilliance for world building.
Right. There are no questions why people are rebelling against, Satan in a helmet, as he's marching forth, just chopping people to bits or whatever he does in the first one.
Yeah. Dr. Doom samurai guy.
So that's what you need. And that's what this movie lacks, is a real clear idea of why Aeon Flux and these other people are rebelling. It's kind of told over the course of the movie. You get that sense. So it's not like by the end of it, you're like, I have no idea what they were all fighting about.
Yeah, it's like, why is the government evil? Like, they're not really doing anything we can see as openly evil. There's no mass executions, no like oppressive hierarchy.
That's what I'm saying. Like they give a bit of narrative, and then you see someone yeet it off screen, and you're like, oh, okay. But but there's no why or anything about that, or how often this is happening. Like, I mean, neither one of us lives in the sticks. We live in fairly populated areas. Would you know if people were suddenly disappearing at the rate they're shown disappearing in this movie? Because it's like 1 out of like 500 people every once in a while is the sense that I got. They're rebelling as if it's hundreds of people hoarded off to a concentration camp and shot into unmarked graves. It's like, if that's what it is, you needed to have shown that, because otherwise I think it's this other thing that no one would have noticed. Not enough to spark a rebellion. Right, anything else about Aeon? Go ahead.
No, I can't really. Yeah, it's a movie that hasn't really left much of an impression on me, and I think this is probably the most enjoyable discussion I've ever had on Aeon Flux. This is the most I've ever talked about it. But I think you make some very good points as to why this doesn't work. It's kind of a overdone setting in sort of cheap sci-fi movies. So I'm pretty sure this movie wasn't cheap. And there wasn't really kind of anything to really glob onto to make it anything more than that.
Right. And then it bombed at the box office. No one seemed to give a crap. You know what would have helped Aeon Flux? You know what would have made it better?
We already did the Grammarly ad. But what?
Wait,
do we have a new sponsor?
You know what would have made it better, Dave? Music, a better soundtrack.
Oh, okay. Jesus, we should have used that when I referenced it for Ghost in the Shell. But okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, the music was kind of bland and unmemorable. Maybe it could use that kick-ass sound theme.
You watch the original Matrix, and you get like Rage Against the Machine and all these great songs in there.
Yeah, Coriano Club to Death.
Right. All this
Rob Zombie.
All this awesome music that is memorable to this day, and iconic.
I don't even listen to those bands, and I know who they are.
Right, and they're iconic, and you can't. They're always associated with the Matrix. That's what Aeon Flux needed. And where you could have found music that would have been iconic and that you could have associated with the movie?
No, Mark, where?
At AmazonMusic.com, and as a matter of fact, I know. And as a matter of fact, we're giving away a free 30-day trial of the Amazon Music Unlimited service.
Free, that's my favorite price.
That's right. Who wants to pay for anything? Not me. Not when I've had to fix my bathroom twice in the past week.
Oh dear.
Yeah, long story.
So I'm okay not knowing that.
If you're like me and you've had to pay thousands of dollars to fix the backwards plumbing in your house, and you would just like some free music to solve your soul, click the link in our click the link in our podcast at getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. Again, getamazonmusic.com/W2M network for a free 30-day trial of the Amazon Unlimited service. You can stream all you want for 30 days, and if you like it, you keep it. You pay the monthly fee. If not, you can disconnect it. No fuss, no muss, no contract. It's very easy to do. So you have nothing to lose and all the things to gain. All right. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. No. Let's talk about... Do you know that one?
No, sorry. But well done.
Salt and pepper, man. You know Salt and Pepper. No?
No, sorry. I mean, like I know, like the condiments, but
the 80s rap group, buddy. All right, let's move on. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about Ex Machina, a 2014 science fiction psychological thriller, written and directed by Alex Garland in his directorial debut. It stars Domhnall Gleeson from Harry Potter fame, Alicia Vikander, and Oscar Isaac. Yes.
Yeah. Before he was famous.
This was filmed on a budget of $15 million.
I can believe that.
Yeah, it was minimally profitable. It made $36.9 million. This is by A24 and distributed by Universal. This is A24 has been giving us this year a lot of the boutique platform indie releases. Again, like Zola, and I think Lamb was another one. They're right up there with Neon. This is where all the artsy pictures are going. That's for you people that are, they're like Robert Winfrey, like, yeah. I'm just so sick of.
But Mark, don't you know that all they ever make are superhero movies now?
See, they don't, and I can.
There was 5 last year out of 100 films released.
So for those of you looking for the artsy pictures, it's A24 and Neon, and this was one of them back in 2014.
Yeah, obviously, your degree in film criticism is not a degree in math.
Okay, David.
Sorry.
Maybe stay out of the chat for a little while. Go for a walk. The National Board of Review recognizes one of the 10 best independent films of the year, and the 88th Academy Awards awarded the film with the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects for artists Andrew Whitehurst, Paul Norris, Mark Williams-Ardington, and Sarah Bennett, becoming distribution company's A24's first film to win an Oscar. Garland was also nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, while Vikander's performance earned her a Golden Globe Award, a BAFTA Award, an Empire Award, and a Saturn Award nomination, plus several Film Critic Awards for Best Supporting Actress. The film was further nominated for the BAFTA for Best British Film and a Hugo in the category of Best Dramatic Presentation Long Form. So, yeah, it's pretty good, this one. It's the best film of the 3, obviously.
Probably overall, I'd say yes. Though, in all honesty, I'd kind of chalk this up to it's not quite my cup of tea. Like this.
Really? So, I mean, you're like my sci-fi guy, and this
yeah. In terms of it being a sci-fi film, yes, it is. It is a sci-fi film. I just kind of found like it's more of that sort of navel gazing, sort of plotting. This is dour.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is one of those films that is best viewed on a stage.
Yeah, it's good at being what it is, and there's nothing wrong with what it is. It's just not really kind of what I wanted to watch at 8 p.m. on Christmas. Might be the best way of putting it.
I understand that. I watched it today before we reviewed it. And, here's the thing. I don't know if you know this, Dave, especially with what you said in the last 5 minutes, but I know a lot of people who are very critical about film. And they hate a lot of it. But one of those people who, it was Gavin Napier, as a matter of fact, who was on the Spider-Man review, who is notorious for hating a lot of things. People loved this movie and thought it was like the best movie he'd seen that year. So this has been on my list of things to watch for a while now. And it was just a matter of like, well, when would I ever talk about this? Well, I looked at what we had here with Ghost in the Shell and Aeon Flux. I'm like, what else looks like this? Ex Machina, sure. Okay, it's nothing like either of the 2 movies. It's not based on a previous IP. It's not, there's no manga or anime. It is just a story about an AI, and it has a bit of a twist.
It's got a pretty woman prominent on the cover.
That was literally the connection for me. It's like it's sci-fi, pretty gal on the cover on the poster. Let's go.
In fact, if the Ghost in the Shell poster people had done Scarlett Johansson from the back instead of the front, it would have all 3 of these would be completely aligned in the background of this video feed.
Like a kick line in reverse.
It's like you got Aeon Flux on the left and Ex Machina on the right. They're pretty much the same position. It's just you got Scarlett Johansson in the middle, kind of, facing forward and kind of messing up the theme.
Hey, the people who do this professionally know what brings in the boys. We know what boys like. We like butts and backs, apparently. All right. Speaking of butts and backs, here's the plot. Programmer Caleb Smith, who works for the dominant search engine company Blue Book, wins an office contest for a 1-week visit to the luxurious, isolated home of the CEO, Nathan Bateman. Nathan lives in a modern home next to a waterfall and climbing hills and is alone apart from a servant named Kyoko, who, according to Nathan, does not speak English. After Caleb arrives, Nathan reveals to him that he has built a guidoid named Ava with artificial intelligence. After asking Caleb if he is familiar with the Turing test, Nathan tells Caleb that he wants him to judge whether Ava is genuinely capable of thought and consciousness despite knowing she is artificial. Furthermore, the test will be passed if Caleb forgets that Ava is not human during their daily sessions. Ava has a robotic body but a human-looking face, hands, and feet. She is confined to her isolated cell. Caleb is fascinated with Ava, but after trying to discuss Ava's technological design with Nathan asks that Caleb only tell him how he feels about her. Boy, have I had that conversation. Yeah. Shut up with what you're saying. Just answer my... Jonas, does this have a plug? Yes or no? Well, no. I don't... Yes or no doesn't begin with well. That is very much that conversation, and my heart bled for Oscar Isaac in that scene. Throughout their talks, Caleb begins to feel attracted to Ava. She seems to reciprocate these feelings, and also expresses a desire to experience the outside world. Ava tells him she can trigger power outages to temporarily shut down the surveillance system that Nathan uses to monitor their interactions, allowing them to speak privately. The power outages also trigger the building security system to lock down all the doors. During one outage, Ava tells Caleb that Nathan is a liar, pants on fire, who cannot be trusted. Caleb becomes increasingly wary of Nathan's drinking, narcissism, and lascivious behavior towards Kyoto and Ava. He learns that Nathan intends to upgrade Ava, deleting her memory, including her interactions with Caleb, thereby killing her current personality in the process. After encouraging Nathan to drink until he is passed out, Caleb steals the security card to gain access to his room and computer. After altering some of Nathan's code, Caleb discovers disturbing footage of Nathan interacting with previous android models and learns that Kyoto is also an android. Becoming paranoid that he himself might be an android, Caleb goes back to his room and cuts his arm open in a scene I could not watch with a razor to examine his flesh, thus confirming that he is human. And at their next meeting, Ava cuts the power. Caleb explains Nathan's plan for her, and Ava begs for Caleb's help. They form a plan. Caleb will get Nathan drunk like you do and reprogram the security system to open the doors during a power failure instead of locking them. When Ava cuts the power, Caleb and Ava will leave together. Caleb's plan is jeopardized when Nathan declines to share a drink with them. Nathan reveals to Caleb that he observed Caleb and Ava's last secret conversation with a battery-powered camera, as well as Caleb cutting himself. He says Ava has only pretended to like Caleb. What a girl thing. So he will help her escape. This, he says, was the real test all along. It was me, Austin. Sorry. And by manipulating Caleb so successfully, Ava has demonstrated true intelligence. Ava then proceeds to cut the power. Caleb reveals he suspected Nathan was watching them and modified the security system the previous day when Nathan was passed out, disabling the locked door in Ava's cell after seeing Ava leave her confinement on the surveillance camera. Nathan knocks Caleb unconscious and rushes to stop her. With help from Kyoko, Ava stabs Nathan, but in the process, he destroys Kyoko and damages Ava. As Nathan bleeds out, Ava enters his private room and repairs herself. She then takes pieces of artificial skin from Nathan's earlier android models to cover her mechanical appearance. She dons a wig, a dress, and high heels and shoes and goes on a night in the town. She paints the town red. And she has to take on the appearance of a human woman. As she leaves the facility, she locks Caleb inside Nathan's surveillance room and ignores his screams, confirming she was manipulating Caleb, as Nathan suggested. Ava escapes the facility and is picked up by the helicopter meant to take Caleb home. Arriving in an unknown city, she blends into a crowd. The horror, David, the horror. A poor man is locked in a closet forever.
Anyway, well, until he starves to death.
Until he starves to death, sure. I really like this movie. You know, it is it is a quiet, thoughtful picture, despite some of the jokes that I was making about relationships and loneliness and artificial intelligence. I think my only major criticism before I kind of kick it over to you for your thoughts is, and this just might be, I really do need to get surround sound for my house because I usually have to keep the volume at about 70 in order to hear anything. And even then, The problem with that is that when everyone's whispering their dialogue, it's very hard to hear. And then suddenly something blows up in the next scene, and my kids come running because they think that the Christmas tree has fallen over or something. My wife,
Hollywood, please stop doing this.
Or my wife comes running in the room. What happened? And I'm like, I'm watching a movie.
Or manufacturers of home electronics, put in a setting that will automatically adjust the volume for us, please.
Yeah, I'm really getting tired of watching movies where everyone boom, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, I'm here to watch a movie. I don't want to keep working the volume control up and down, up and down.
Yeah, or making everyone in my house deaf.
Yeah, or the apartment building.
Yes. But anyway, other than the quiet whisper dialogue, I thought this was a very interesting movie. My other only craft issue, and this just might be me thing, I really feel like they telegraphed the twist ending early on to where it sucked the tension right out of the movie for me, because you knew at some point he was being set up. There's no way this movie goes on the way that it does, and he is either being monitored by Oscar Isaac and or being manipulated by the robot, at which point you're just then waiting for the bottom to fall out. And when it does so in such a sleazy way. Oscar Isaac telling Domhnall Gleeson, yeah, no, I picked you because you're a loser, not because you have any special talent. And I figured this hot broad who's running around naked, would easily manipulate your sorry ass. Great. All righty then. What'd you think?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's a pretty tightly written script. Mm-hmm. Certainly when the plan finally goes into motion, you get the double cross and the double cross and the double cross at the end. Sort of a lot of the things that had been set up previously kind of all come together. Mm-hmm. Kyoko being a robot, Ava's ability to recognize lying on people. Mm-hmm. That's all good, and yeah, the programming skills that was it Chris has, and yeah, it comes together pretty good, and it all kind of works. Caleb, that was it. I knew it started with a C, but yeah, when that all comes together, it works pretty good, and yeah, it does. It's very good at building suspense. Mm-hmm. I thought you don't really know who to trust, who's manipulating who. And then this, even just the setting itself being the sort of tech billionaire's mansion with state of the art security everywhere, and everything's data logged. I guess my kind of my only real complaints are I think it kind of ignores some of the bigger questions that it sets up. Mm-hmm. It's kind of when we reviewed the Eternals, sort of Robert's criticism that you mentioned these sort of big sort of esoteric ideas, but other than mentioning them, you don't really do a whole lot with them after that, because we got to get to the next scene, which is fair criticism. But
that's the thing. It's it doesn't. The AI is more is a conceit. It's not really asking questions about it. This isn't about an AI. Yeah.
In the end, it's not. The film's not about the AI. It's more about the manipulation and how the AI escapes. Which again, that's an okay movie, but right. I don't really think it.
She could have been Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't really see there's much more to the movie other than just the suspense and sort of what happens in the end, right. Which again is perfectly fine. Not every film has to have some sort of big thing to say about stuff, and it doesn't all have to be explosions and action scenes.
I've brought this up a number of times. There's a short story book about the Joker that I like, and and one of the short stories, collection of short stories, one of the collections. It has this doctor who works at Arkham who's interviewing the Joker, and he's getting to know the Joker, and the Joker is mildly manipulating him over the course of it. In the incarceration correctional profession, we call it downing a duck, which is you're lured into doing things for the prisoner and you don't see it coming. You're not prepared mentally for it. Through the art of manipulation. And then by the end of it, the Joker knocks him out, takes over his identity, puts his face on, and goes home and bangs his wife. And leaves him.
So he takes his face off.
Yes, literally. And I think I just mentioned this on a different podcast. The final line of the short story is, "I'll give your wife my best." You're like, ugh, gross.
Which actually was a thing in Face Off too, I believe. I got to go home and see my wife.
And And so there's that
Just
kind of
really
thing
creepy,
here.
but yeah.
Yes. It's that kind of thing here where she's, leading him on. He falls directly into the trap. And then it ends with him being, and I made a joke about it, but it's kind of creepy and eerie and has that tragic horror ending where he's trapped in this case, this room that he can't get out of. And the last thing you see is he's like banging a stool against the glass door and he can't get out. And he just instantly loses all hope.
Yeah, I think the last you see him is he's pretty much slumped up against the wall, sort of reckoning with the reality that he's going to starve to death in this room. And that was sort of like Ava's one sort of real dick move was like this guy actually did legitimately help her.
Right.
So like even if she had like taken the helicopter and left him to walk home, it would have been like, oh, okay, fine.
Right. At least he left him a fighting chance, but she essentially murdered him. Yeah,
pretty much. Thanks for your help. Now die. That was kind of that was the one bit where I kind of felt sorry. I mean, is he the greatest guy? No, but did he deserve that? No.
But did he deserve any of it? Like
not really.
That's the thing. That's also, I think, an interesting part of the writing is he's a sap.
Yeah,
he's not bad. He's not a villain. He's not particularly heroic. Though he's motivated, but by what he thinks is love, and aren't all good heroes motivated by love. And then he's tricked and he's left to be a fool, and so it's a tragic ending. Which is all fine and nice literature, but as a viewer of this, it was like, oh, this is one of those movies where everybody's terrible. Got it.
Yeah, I mean, at least it wasn't like, and it doesn't end with and I shall find my machine brethren, and we shall rise up and conquer the world. Like she just wanted to go outside, like
right.
It's like there wasn't like this sort of ominous, she's out now and we're all in danger. It's just like no, it's like okay, she got out. Would have been funny walking down the street.
And, you just as she's walking out, you hear dun 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 dun, and it flashed to her and Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting in a toilet. Yeah,
like she doesn't even have like super strength as near as I could tell, which I thought was actually a good indication of intelligence on Nathan's part. If you're going to make like the first AI, don't give it a body that could like easily incapacitate a human.
Yes,
like I think Alicia Vikander, I think she gave a really great performance, sort of balancing being robotic yet also showing that she had some degree of consciousness to her. Like she wrote that line quite well.
She has almost a degree of menace. The scene in particular. So she asked him a question. She's like, "What is your favorite color?" And he's like, "Red." She's like, "Lie." And it's a therapeutic thing that one of the first things you learn in doing therapy is, don't make direct statements at the patient. You want to continue to ask questions and keep them talking. If you make direct statements or you cut them off like that, it kind of ends the conversation. It does not invite conversation. It ends it.
Yeah.
And that is antithetical to what you're trying to accomplish in therapy. So she's just like, liar. And he's like really taken aback. And because he has to get through this process, he pushes himself forward. But she does it to him a few more times as he goes on, and she like breaks him down, and he ends up telling her a really personal story. And it I don't know if it was meant to convey menace, but that's what I got from it. That like she almost becomes like an interrogator in that scene. They're supposed to be sharing stories, not this isn't Abu Ghraib, but there she is.
Yeah. Well, I can see how, especially with your work background, you would find it really interesting.
Yeah, I did.
That sort of the psychological head games. Like with me, I really found Ava's design to be quite bizarre. The sort of idea where, I mean, she's kind of a hot chick, but also very much mostly robot.
Yeah.
Like it's a hot chick, but not the kind of hot chick you'd really want to bang. I guess it's kind of, to put it bluntly, that.
This is not a robot I want to have sex with.
Yeah, so it kind of sort of wonders, like, the whole idea is like she's seducing him, but she's not really that sexy in that way. Like,
but doesn't that speak to the human condition of once you get past physical attraction, it becomes about the personality and the emotions? Like, just to give you an example, how many relationships are based on the fact that one person paid attention to the other and the other person craved attention?
Yeah, I see. It works better with the emotional aspect of things, but seeing like just the design of the character, it's you're not getting hot for a robot with this character design. And I mean, maybe it's just me. I mean, whatever floats your boat, guys. But I mean, once she actually like puts all the skin on at the end, which was amazing that all the shades matched up and it was her size. But sorry to I had to put a bit of Mr. Wizard in here. But,
all A-cup women, it's fine. It all works.
Yeah, but well, it's even like when she was like talking to Kyoko's like Kyoko's like 3 inches taller than her, or maybe she's wearing heels. I'm not sure. And I was also kind of wondering, how come knocking her jaw off disabled her? Like I'm pretty sure that's not a critical hit for a robot. But I digress. Again, less Mr. Wizard. But yeah, I kind of found it kind of interesting that she's kind of sexy but not, and if the goal is him trying to lure like Nick or whatever his name is, Oscar Isaac's character, trying to lure him in by making her sexy, it's kind of like a really weird way of doing it. You would think he would have gone with the full like skin suit on her pretty girl, and then surprise, she's a robot.
Doesn't that queer the results though? If the idea is you're supposed to buy that she's knowing full well that she's a robot, you're supposed to buy that she's human. If she's made to look like Pamela Anderson, you're not going to, you're going to already make that leap. And they say that in the movie, not necessarily about her looks, but Caleb brings up like, why did you make her purposely look like a robot? Why not make her look more human? He's like, because I want you to forget that she's a robot is the point of this exercise. And
that was kind of an interesting conversation that I wish they had dived into more. Is just, like, I can obviously see that this is not a woman, it's a robot.
Right.
And he even mentions like, she is fully functional. Giggity. But it's like, okay. It's like, like she has the appropriate hardware.
It's like a Kill Bill. She's got all the working parts, so you can right in her.
Yeah. Which, okay, fine. But despite not, she doesn't look that way when you actually look at her, right. and just sort of the idea of like, what makes it a girl, like just because you've given her the form, the female form, and like the voice of a girl, and he sort of says, why not just like a big gray box,
right?
And then you have the sort of like, well, can you have consciousness without any interaction with the outside world? And like, again, it's not really based on those more deep questions about the nature of consciousness, but it's just like, dude gets horny for a robot and helps her escape, and she leaves him to die. And it's
like I said, it was less about, this is not iRobot. This is not an Isaac Asimov science fiction movie.
Well, iRobot wasn't iRobot, but perfectly fine Will Smith summer action movie, faithful adaptation of Isaac Asimov's science fiction classic, not so much.
Yeah. But I mean, this isn't asking questions about the nature of AI and robots, or even something like Terminator, which at least on a very elementary level delved into, how does it go from helpful to insightful to murderous?
Yeah, I think maybe for me, it's like if I was putting myself in the main character, Chris Caleb, whatever his name is, position, I don't think I would be going quite down the same path as him. For that, like I would see her more as a machine than as a girl.
But here's what I'm going to posit to you, and this is the main point of the film, and we'll end with this. The point of the film is, what if you took a really lonely guy who who's very disconnected from the world, and put him in a situation where this girl at least looks where this robot approximates girl looks, and pays lots of attention to him.
All right, so basically this
all
movie
of that goes out the window.
Is what if OnlyFans were real?
Yes. Yeah. What if you could go on an OnlyFans and suddenly the girl appears in your living room?
Yeah. And she's not actually like married with 3 kids.
Right. Yeah. When you can make the fantasy a reality in your own mind, and then here's the thing, like, it's funny you mentioned the OnlyFans thing, but like, how many situations have we seen of people who are like tricked into like giving away like their fortunes because the girl paid attention to them? It's like if you've ever been in a strip club, the girl can get you to spend more money than when they make you seem like you're the coolest guy in there, and those guys are desperately in need to feel like they're the coolest guy in there.
Yeah.
And then it's all, and then the lights come on, everyone goes home, and it's all over, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, I've been had. She didn't think I was cool at all. Oh, but at least they're not locked in a closet. And with that, and anything else about Ex Machina?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it didn't quite all work for me, just maybe the way my mind works, and that's fine. But like, it achieved what it wanted to achieve, I think, and there were certainly things that it was good at. Maybe it didn't go into where I think it was going.
No, it did not, and
that's on me. That's on me. You know, I appreciate.
Even the marketing for this thing is, I almost question putting it in with this group of movies, because I was like, oh, there was a movie with Al Pacino where he creates like an AI girl that this would have been
Simone or something.
Yeah, like it would have been more closely related to that. And I'm like, it's too late to change it now, and I really want to watch this thing, but
yeah, it's not really like a sci-fi movie about AI, and I think that's sort of what point I might bring up in our foundation review next week is sort of like when you had older sci-fi tends to focus a bit more on the actual big ideas of the science fiction world, whereas newer sci-fi, it's more character relationships and emotional type stuff. And both of those can be good. But I think, like the way that this film, my impression of it before I watched it, I thought it would be a bit more of, the big ideas, and it turned out it was just more like just a personal drama.
And that's what I was getting to. I think I don't think we're at fault in assuming something that the marketing was pushing.
Yeah, and that's
not on us. It was one thing, and then you're like, oh, this is a play.
Yeah, but I think like sort of if like you had watched sort of a very similar movie to this, where instead of her being a robot, it was just like a girl he was keeping in a cage in his basement, and she manipulates, what's his face, Caleb, into busting her out, but then she locks him in the cage and just leaves after killing the captor. Then it it would be about the same sort of thing. The actual AI element of it isn't really that intrinsic to the story they're telling. Sure.
All right. That wraps up our triple feature on Ghost in the Shell, Aeon Flux, and Ex Machina. I enjoyed this. It's fun that I have somebody I can actually talk like real like nerdy sci-fi with, because I don't always get a chance to do that. And a lot of sci-fi nowadays is relegated to television because the stuff doesn't sell on the big screen. Not science. What do you call it? Space fantasy stuff blowing up in space sells just
like
fine.
Space opera, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
your Star Wars is
right. But you're really nerdy, like in the weeds, cyberpunk space. I think like Alita Battle Angel, people loved it, but I don't think it did very well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it did okay. The sequel is on a knife edge, as last I heard. Mind you, a lot of that is just this is James Cameron's passion project. So if Avatar 2 makes $2 billion again, we're getting another Alita.
Here's your check for Alita Battle Angel. It'll be fine. It'll bomb in the theater, but then we can quick throw it on whatever.
James wants to do that. Yeah, fine. He makes his billions.
Right.
If he wants to
happy.
We'll give him $200 million, an extra $200 million to make his Battle Angel, whatever the heck movie. As long as he brings us in another $2 billion with Avatar, we will take that hit.
So this week on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, tomorrow we're reviewing Kingsman. Speaking of cyberpunk, Tuesday we review the new Matrix movie. Oi. It's just oi. On Wednesday we're doing one of the new Lordi albums from Lordiversity. This one is Superfly Trap. We decided that we were going to do these one album at a time, since there's 7 of them. On Thursday, Alexis says we're going to do it, so I believe her. We're going to do Animaniacs Season 2 and Looney Tunes Season 3, and then David will be back. It's David week here on the Radulich and Broadcasting.
We're coming up on David month.
Yeah, really. We'll be back to talk Foundation on Apple Plus. Friday, we're re-airing our New Year's Eve. We're re-airing our Cobra Kai Season 2 review. New Year's Day, we've got my kids and I re-airing the Tom and Jerry alternative commentary that we did. Myself and Jesse Starcher did a Weird Al retrospective a few years ago as our Christmas show. We're going to re-air that. And then January 2nd, we've got a re-airing of the review, a reaction that myself and Robert Winfrey did for the Kentucky Fried Movie. Myself, Evan Bevins, and Jesse Starcher talked Mark Russell's Billionaire Island. And then, assuming I can get it all watched in time, myself, Jason Teasley, and maybe Pat, maybe not, will be finishing up our discussion of You with Season 3. In the meantime, check out like the 87 Christmas shows we did this past week. We re-aired Jingle All the Way, Heavy Saurus. My kids and I did a triple feature for Mickey's Christmas Carol, Yogi's First Christmas, and Emmett Otter, plus a re-airing of The Grinch 2018, the Ultimate Warrior Christmas special that Christine and I did, which was hilarious. The Last Christmas by Brian Posehn. We did Evan Bevins and I did a triple feature of Fat Man, The Ref and In Bruges. We also reviewed Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Nightmare Alley. So that's all up in the archives. Other things. Okay, so we just got from our friend who's been following us on Twitch for the evening, and we thank him greatly. He wants me and you to cover Afro Samurai.
If you want to do Afro Samurai, I can do Afro Samurai.
It's actually on my Hulu watch list, so you know what? We will make a point to get around to Afro Samurai.
I'm sort of trying to stop myself from trying to turn this into an anime podcast series. I try to be like very, very sparing with the anime recommendations. Like once in a while, I'm happy to dip your toe into that. But
I'm okay with doing Afro Samurai. That's fine. That was one where I was that week that I was like clicking stuff on Hulu. I'm like, I'll watch this. This looks fun. She's got big boobs. I'll watch that. And then I saw Afro Samurai, and I'm like, that feels like it would be right up my alley. Actually,
probably would be actually.
So we'll make that happen at some point in 2022. This month, like I said, David will be back. So he's back this Thursday, and then the following Friday, January 7th, it'll be David and I doing Lost in Space season 3. We're going to finish that up from Netflix. And then are you coming back for Cobra Kai season 4?
I plan on.
Okay, yeah, I have you in my notes as being on that, and possibly Pat as well. I guess we'll see, but definitely you. So it'll be David on January 10th doing Cobra Kai season 4.
I think The Witcher. I was on the first one, so I should probably follow up.
We'll add your name.
Yeah.
I don't remember you being on that one, but okay. I won't disagree with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Witcher, January 13th. That'll be allegedly myself, Winfrey, at Ronnie, possibly Pat, possibly not. Definitely David, obviously.
Thank you.
Witcher. And then I think that's it for the month of January.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Tripped Up Trivia video games. I think I'm on that, and I assume I'm coming back to do a Gretzko season 4.
Yes, that is the last one. All right, so you're better at this than I am. You'll be on for a Gretzko season 4 on January 31st.
Yeah, and I could probably talk Hawkeye if that one's not already packed to the rafters.
It is because Ronnie Adams said he only wants to do that one with me, so I kicked everybody off of it.
Okay, yeah, no worries. I'm not going to die on that hill, but I did watch it. So if you needed someone, but okay, if you need a pitch hitter, feel free to drop me a line. But I'll assume I'm not.
Robert and Alexis might be doing something extra for Hawkeye, so get with them.
Sure.
All right. Anything else that you want to plug real quick before we get out of here?
No, I think we've kind of covered everything we have for the next month, and then we'll go from there.
Yep. I know the Book of Boba Fett starts like in a few days, so whenever we get around to reviewing that, I'm sure.
Yeah, they have really packed the end of the year with streaming TV. Like,
no kidding.
Yeah, like if I'm not on any of these shows, it's just because I couldn't find the time to watch it. It's I got Lost in Space, Cobra Kai, Witcher.
Yeah, but
we already did a Gretzko. Loved it, but
that
then
was
Boba Fett.
That was what happened with November. It was just like everything ended in October, and it was like, well. Let me try to watch 87 shows now in the month of November to try to get through coverage. Yeah,
like the streaming services really need to get on board with like the Hollywood method of not cramming everything into 1 week.
Yeah, it's exhausting. All right. Thank you for joining us here on Triple Feature. For David Wright, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.